my universe, are you comfortable? I want you to enjoy tonight's bedtime story. Get a good sleep tonight, okay? Now, you can close your eyes so you can keep your eyes open and look at me, but just don't move and stay just like that. Relaxed, peaceful. Because I thought of a story today. I don't know where it really came from. Just kind of appeared as I was out riding. You know, sometimes the best stories and songs come while you're in a peaceful moment. And I thought, well, I want to tell you this one. I'm gonna just take my time and not rush it. Hopefully this will help you to take you to another place. The story is about the lighthouse. It starts like how most good stories start, you know. Somebody going to a place that they've never been before, maybe for the first time, feeling like maybe this place that they go to is where they're really supposed to be. Now close your eyes. I'll do the rest. His name was Thomas, and he hadn't planned on stopping. He'd been driving for about 6 hours up the coast. The kind of driving where you're not really having a goal, you're just kind of getting away from something. His windows were down and the radio had lost its signal somewhere around the second hour, driving on the coastline. He hadn't bothered to try to find the radio connection again. He just let the silence sit with him as he drove, and after a while, it stopped feeling like silence and started feeling like something else, like a space, like a room. The sign for the town showed up and gave some kind of population number that had clearly been repainted and changed a couple of times. Someone drew a small black bird next to the population sign in a black marker. He didn't know why, but for some reason seeing that sign made him slow down. And the town was small. It wasn't like super tiny, not quaint, you know, but just really small, kind of like a town I grew up in. Reminds me of my town, actually. I think it's where I'm based from. There was one gas station, one small post office that was also the general store. There was one small little cafe / diner that had the menu written in the window by, like, you know, a handwritten menu. And in front of that post office / general store, there was like this little dog sleeping in front of it. And it's like that was its job, you know, to sit there and sleep in front of the store. He pulled into the gas station and the woman that was in there didn't really pay attention to him. Just, he went in, filled the tank, got a coffee, and he asked if there was anywhere to stay for the night. And she pointed without looking up towards this road by the harbor. And she said, there's a place at the end. It's not a hotel, but the people there rent the room above the lighthouse sometimes if they're in a good mood. So Thomas looked out the window at the road she pointed towards. It curved down towards the water. was that particular shade of late afternoon where it's almost golden hour, and you know that it feels like it's not gonna last. That that perfect golden sunlight. So you kind of want to hold that feeling a little longer. So anyway, you get back in the car and drove towards the water, towards the lighthouse. Turns out that lighthouse was a lot older than he expected it to be. It was exactly the size of a lighthouse that you would see in an old photograph or a painting. It's not super big, and it wasn't like old and crumbly. It was just weather-torn, the way old things get when they've been hit by the weather and they're still just staying strong, It was white with this faded red stripe around the middle, and the lamp at the top of the lighthouse, it wasn't running. It was in the afternoon still, but Thomas imagined how the light would look. He could imagine standing on that little balcony and watching that beam of light swoop over the water. There was a mosquito in here. I'm trying to tell a story. Alright. Lay down and listen to the story too, okay? So there was a man sitting on the front step. He was maybe like 50 years old. He was getting gray, and he had hands that looked like they worked hard building stuff, He was drinking from this tiny tin cup, and he watched Thomas drive up on the gravel road in front of the lighthouse. I think the story's making me sleepy too. The man was watching Thomas, looked at him like he was expecting him. It was strange because Thomas didn't tell anybody that he was coming. The man, his name was Owen. He didn't say hi. He just looked at Thomas for a while, and then he just looked back out over the water. He asked if he's staying one night or more. Then Thomas started to say one night, but then he said more instead. Don't know why he said it. But anyway. The room was up a narrow staircase that had curved around the inner part of the lighthouse. No one had led Thomas up the stairs without, explaining much. Just, Thomas kind of appreciated not having to talk so much, because he wasn't, trying to tour or anything. So anyway, he gets to the room, and the room is small and perfect, the way that, those old small town rooms might be, single bed with a white frame, and a quilt that probably had been homemade. And there was a wooden desk under a porthole type of window. That window looked directly out over the ocean. And the lamp on the desk, it gave off this warm light. And there was a shelf of lots of books, old books. Some of the books looked like they had been really well read, There was this little wood stove in the corner, There was wood around it, but it wasn't running. Owen said that the bathroom was down one flight of stairs, and he said that there was food in the kitchen if Thomas wanted to eat, he could help himself. He said if he needed anything, he'd be around, but mostly he just kept himself in the evenings, and Thomas was welcome to do the same. Guess it meant the old man didn't really want to be bothered. Anyway, after that he just left. Not any small talk or going over house rules, just not even asking Thomas where he was from or where he's going. So Thomas stood in the room, for a moment he felt like alone and felt something inside of him kind of relax a bit, like, when you have a tight feeling in your chest and then you exhale and you let go of that tension. It was like that. That knot was pulled out of him and finally relaxed at that tension. So he sat his back on the floor and he didn't unpack. He just sat on the edge of the bed, looked out of the window, the window like a porthole, over the ocean. The ocean was kind of a green hue and enormous. There were waves moving across it in long, slow swells. There's a boat somewhere far, far out. Barely you can make out the shape of it. So he sat there for a long time. But at some point, the light changed, and he realized that the sun was gone down. The room was kind of dim, except for that warm light. And he hadn't turned it on, but it had just come on by itself at some point. Maybe there's a timer or something, but the glow of the light made everything in the room feel like a photograph. So at that point he laid back on the bed not really meaning to, but he just leaned back, looked at the ceiling, and saw the blaster kind of like crackling, slightly curved, following the shape of the lighthouse walls. And he took a deep breath. Outside, the lighthouse light, the lamp for the lighthouse came on, and he could see the edge of the beam through the porthole window, and he saw it sweeping out over the water, once, twice, just going around and around, patient and steady. He thought about all the ships that had probably seen that light over the years, probably over 100 years, and they navigated their way by that light. They're probably sailors who had been somewhere dark and not knowing where to go, and then they saw that light, and seeing that light circulating, going around in our arc, just moving through the night, gave them hope to know where they were. Thought about sometimes you don't need much, you just need something steady in the darkness. That one point of light that says, here. You're here. You know where you are now. So he closed his eyes, and he slept better than he slept in a very long time. Anyway, in the morning he woke up to something being set outside the step, right outside of his door. And it wasn't a knock, it was just like a sound, something was deliberately placed just, in front of the door. And then he heard the footsteps going back down the stairs. And he lay still for a moment, but then he got up and opened the door. And there was a tin cup of coffee, still hot. He stood in the doorway in the morning light, just holding the coffee. Didn't know how he should respond, Didn't know exactly what was that feeling that it gave him. It was like the small thing, and it didn't cost anything, but there was something in the care into bringing an extra cup of coffee to him, to carry it up and just leave without bothering him. It touched him somewhere in his heart that he didn't really expect. So anyway, he got dressed, went downstairs, and Owen was sitting in the kitchen, by the table with a chart spread out in front of him. It was like a really old paper chart with like markings and depth markings and all these notations that you might see on an ocean map. And he was making small corrections with pencil. Didn't pay attention to Thomas when he walked in. So Thomas made himself useful, found bread and found a pan, made toast for both of them. And he set a plate in front of Owen, and Owen nodded, didn't look up, but just acknowledged that nod was like, good job or thank you. And Thomas started to understand this was Owen's version of warmth. They ate the toast in silence, not uncomfortable silence, just that peaceful moment when you just share a moment with somebody. And it's like you understand each other without saying anything. So after a while, Owen said to Thomas, are you running from something, or are you going towards something? Thomas sat and thought about it for a minute and said, I'm not really sure yet. Owen nodded and said, yeah, most people really aren't sure. Those are the ones that are certain. Usually haven't been paying attention. Thomas looked out the window and he saw the few boats over the ocean just rocking. The water was calm, and there's a seagull on the post not really doing anything. It felt like a moment from a movie, And Thomas thought, I could stay here for a while. He said, maybe that's enough of a reason. So that night, Thomas sat on the iron balcony, just at the top of the lighthouse. Owen had said he was welcome to it any evening that he wanted. It was cold in the way that autumn coastlines get kind of chilly. Not super cold, but you can feel it. He had a blanket around his shoulders, and he had that tin cup again, and that beam of the lighthouse lamp just passed over him every few seconds. Finish the story. Lay down, let me finish the story. So where was I? He was sitting down and there was a light going over him from the lighthouse. And he could see the water lighting up with the bright beam of the light going out towards the horizon. And he didn't really think about anything special, just there's nothing really demanding his attention. And it was that moment that he felt for the first time in years that this was a true, honest moment for him. He just sat in the absence of urgency and let the moment do what it wanted. The stars started coming out slowly, and as he looked up in the sky, watching them appear one by one, he felt that they were kind of modest, but stable, giving a moment, a point that was fixed in each of its assigned placement in the sky. And he stayed there until it was like really cold. Then he went back inside. He went down the stairs, curling around the lighthouse, back into his room. And he left the light on. And he got himself comfortable under the quilt. He could still see the light from the lighthouse passing over the window. He was patient, steady, and just counted watching it go around once, twice, again. That light reminding seafarers that you're here and you're safe and you know where you are. Thomas fell asleep. That's all I've got so far. Maybe just a reminder to go to sleep. To know that you're here in a safe place. You know where you are. You're somewhere warm, soft, comfortable. There's nothing you need to do. You can live in this moment with your eyes closed. Drift